I woke up with my best friend's hand down my shorts. And the crazy part? He didn't stop when I opened my eyes. We were supposed to be camping. Just two guys, old friends, sharing a tent in the middle of nowhere. No cell signal, no distractions, just beers, a fire, and stories under the stars. We'd done trips like this before. Since college, actually. We both needed the break. Dylan had just ended a long-term thing with his girlfriend, and I was in that burned-out post-breakup limbo where nothing felt real anymore. So when he texted me, "Dude, let's just disappear for a weekend," I said yes before he could even send a second message. The first day was nothing special. We hiked into the forest about 3 miles until we hit a ridge that opened to a wide clearing above a stream. Perfect spot. Flat ground, tall trees, a fire pit someone else had left behind. We pitched the tent, cracked open a couple of beers, and by nightfall, we were full of burgers, smoke, and the kind of lazy comfort that only comes with years of knowing someone. Dylan had always been a physical guy, that kind of touchy, grabby type who'd sling an arm over your shoulder or shove you playfully without thinking. He never had boundaries in the traditional sense, and I'd gotten used to it. But I'd be lying if I said I never felt anything. Maybe it was the way his hands lingered too long sometimes, or the way he'd stretch shirtless by the fire just a little longer than necessary. I always chalked it up to nothing, because Dylan was straight. Had always been straight, at least as far as I knew. It had to be around 3 a.m. when I woke up. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The tent was warm, too warm. The air smelled like pine needles, sweat, and leftover campfire smoke clinging to our clothes. But what yanked me out of sleep wasn't a sound or a nightmare. It was a sensation. Soft, slow, intentional. There was a hand, not my own, inside my shorts. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up, but I didn't move. I didn't even breathe at first. I could feel Dylan's body behind me, his legs tangled with mine, his chest pressed against my back, steady and solid. His breath was warm against my neck. I thought maybe he was asleep. Maybe it was some freak accident of sleep movement and poor tent space, but then I felt it again, his fingers brushing lower, slower. His thumb grazed just beneath the waistband of my underwear. That's when my heart started hammering in my chest. "Dylan?" I whispered, barely audible. He didn't jump. Didn't pull away like someone caught doing something they weren't supposed to. Instead, he kept his hand right where it was. He leaned in a little, his mouth close to my ear. His voice was low, barely more than breath. "I was wondering if you'd wake up." I turned my head just enough to see his eyes. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't sleepwalking. He was fully awake, watching me like he had been for a while. "Dude." I didn't even know what came after that. My brain short-circuited. I didn't know if I was supposed to be angry, freaked out, or "Don't freak out," he said softly. "I'll stop if you want me to." His hand didn't move though. Neither did I. We stared at each other in that dark space for what felt like a full minute. The only sounds were our breathing and the distant chirp of crickets outside. The silence stretched, heavy and complicated. Finally, I asked, "What are you doing?" Dylan blinked, like the question surprised him. "I don't know," he said after a second. I couldn't sleep. I started thinking about things. About you. I stared at him, searching for the joke. But he looked dead serious. Nervous, even. "We've been friends forever," he continued, his voice quiet. "And I've always thought about this, thought about you, more than I probably should have. I just didn't know how to bring it up without ruining everything." My heart was racing so fast it felt like my ribs might crack open. "You're straight," I said, not as an accusation, but more like a fact I was trying to remind us both of. "I thought I was," he said, "but maybe I'm not. Or maybe I just never looked at anyone else the way I look at you." His hand was still resting on my skin, still warm, still not moving. "Is this okay?" he asked. And for the first time in that frozen, surreal moment, I realized something else. I didn't want him to stop. I didn't answer him right away. I couldn't. My mouth had gone dry. And I felt like any word I said would crack the whole moment open, send it spilling into something real, something we couldn't take back. but I didn't move his hand. Maybe that was answer enough. Dylan watched me closely in the dark, like he was waiting for a green light, or for me to bolt. And honestly, a part of me wanted to bolt. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did. Way more than I was ready to admit. I'd spent years burying feelings, locking them away behind jokes and frat boy humor and casual shoulder punches. We didn't talk about this kind of thing. We didn't do this kind of thing. But here we were. I didn't plan this, he whispered. I didn't come out here thinking it would happen. It's just, once we were in the tent, just us, it felt right. His honesty scared the hell out of me. Dylan had always been the confident one, the guy who made decisions quickly and never looked back. But right now, he looked vulnerable. He looked like he didn't know if I was about to hit him or kiss him. I reached down, slowly, and rested my hand on top of his. Just enough pressure to let him know I wasn't pulling away. His eyes flicked down, then back up to mine. His breath caught in his throat. "You sure?" he asked, voice barely a breath. I nodded, barely. That was all it took. His hand moved again, this time with more purpose. He slid it down, slow and deliberate, like he was testing what I'd allow, what we could get away with. And I didn't stop him. I was too far gone, too wound up from everything. His body heat, the press of his chest against my back, the way he was holding his breath like the world might shatter if I changed my mind. Then his lips brushed the back of my neck. It was soft. Barely there. But it sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. I swallowed hard, shifting slightly, just enough to turn toward him. Our faces were inches apart in the shadows. I could see the outline of his jaw, the curve of his lips, the flicker of something intense in his eyes. "I don't want this to screw things up," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "Me either." But the tension in the space between us felt like it had been building for years, and it was finally cracking open. All those nights of sleeping 2 feet apart, all the playful jabs, the too long stares, the way he looked at me sometimes like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. He found them now, in touch, not talk. His hands slid back up my stomach, resting flat against my chest, and I could feel the tremble in his fingers. He wasn't as confident as he looked. He was scared too. That made 2 of us. I leaned in slowly, hesitating for just a beat before our lips met. It wasn't fireworks, not at first. It was clumsy and hesitant. 2 guys who weren't supposed to be doing this, testing a line they'd never crossed. But then he kissed me harder, like he was tired of pretending, and the air between us changed. It got warmer, heavier, real. We didn't say much after that. Words would have broken the spell. We just lay there in the half-dark, tangled together, not quite sure what we'd done or what it meant. But I knew one thing as I fell asleep in his arms. Something between us had changed forever, and there was no going back. I woke up to the sound of birds and the faint rustle of leaves outside the tent. Morning light bled in through the thin nylon walls, soft and golden, but the warmth I felt wasn't from the sun. It was from Dylan's arm, still wrapped around my waist. His breath was slow and steady against the back of my neck. I didn't move at first. I just lay there, trying to make sense of the night before. My mind felt heavy, like it was still sorting through the pieces of something I wasn't sure I understood yet. Part of me was waiting for him to wake up, laugh it off, or act like nothing had happened. But another part, one I didn't want to look at too closely, hoped he'd remember every second and stay close. A few minutes passed before he stirred. His grip loosened around me, and I felt him shift behind me. "Morning," he said, voice hoarse from sleep. I turned toward him slowly, not sure what kind of face I'd find. But his eyes were soft, no panic, no regret, just Dylan, sleepy, barefaced, and real. "Hey," I said quietly. He searched my face for a beat, then gave a nervous smile. "So, that happened." "Yeah," I breathed. For a second, we just looked at each other, neither of us really knowing what came next. The air between us was thick with everything unsaid, everything that now had to be said. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I nodded. "You?" He exhaled, then chuckled under his breath. Weirdly, "Yeah?" There was a pause, not awkward, just cautious, like we were both walking barefoot on something fragile. He sat up a little, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean to ambush you last night. I know it was kind of sudden." "It wasn't an ambush," I said, sitting up beside him. "I mean, it surprised me, but not in a bad way." He glanced at me, then looked down at his hands. "I've been thinking about it for a while," he admitted. "Longer than I even want to admit. I didn't know how to bring it up without making shit weird between us." My heart thudded at that. "You didn't make it weird." He gave me a sideways look. "Not yet." I smiled, despite the tangle of nerves in my stomach. "We don't have to figure it all out right now." That seemed to relax him a little. He nodded, leaning back on his hands, letting out a breath like he'd been holding it all night. The rest of the morning was quieter than usual. We made coffee over the fire, shared a bag of trail mix, and talked about nothing important. Weather, bugs, the plan for hiking out later. But there were these small, telling moments. The way he bumped his knee into mine when we sat on a log. The way his eyes lingered just a little too long when I looked away. The way his fingers brushed mine when I handed him the thermos. It was subtle, but it was there. A shift. Around midday, we packed up camp and started the hike back. It was warm, and sweat soaked through our shirts within the first 20 minutes. The trail was narrow, so we walked single file, his boots crunching the dirt behind mine. I could hear his breathing, his occasional curses at tree roots and uneven ground, and it felt normal. Except it wasn't. Not anymore. When we finally reached the car, we threw our stuff into the trunk and collapsed into the front seats with a groan. "God, I forgot how brutal the uphill part is," he muttered, pulling off his shirt and tossing it into the back. I tried not to stare, but let's be real. I did, and he caught me. His eyes flicked over, and a slow smirk spread across his face. "What?" I asked, trying to play it cool. "Nothing," he said, still smirking as he turned the key in the ignition. "Just noticing things." The drive back to the city was quieter than usual. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. Like we were both trying to hold on to whatever this was, before real life crept back in and complicated it. As we got closer to my place, I felt that creeping anxiety tighten in my chest. Were we going to talk about what we were now? What last night meant? Or were we going to pretend it was a one-time thing? He parked in front of my building and left the engine running. For a second, neither of us moved. "Well," I said, "back to reality." Dylan didn't look at me right away. He just stared through the windshield like he was fighting something in his head. Then he turned to me. "I don't want this to be a one-time thing," he said, voice low and certain. "I don't want to pretend nothing happened. I don't know what this means yet or what we are, but I know I want to figure it out, with you." My chest tightened, but not in a bad way. More like something locked deep inside it just clicked open. "Okay," I said, "me too." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was hiding anything. We didn't kiss again that day, we didn't even hug. But that moment in the car, with Dylan looking at me like I wasn't just his best friend, but something more, something he wanted to fight for, that stuck with me longer than anything else. And when I went upstairs, threw my bag onto the floor, and collapsed onto the couch, I couldn't stop replaying it. He wanted to figure it out. With me. I should have felt relieved, maybe even excited. But instead, I felt this heavy, quiet pressure settle on my chest. Because now, it was real. No more tents or safe forest air to hide behind. We were back in our separate apartments, our separate lives. And figuring things out in the city meant facing everything else too. Friends, assumptions, labels. I didn't hear from Dylan the rest of the day. I didn't expect a love letter or anything, but part of me wanted a message. Something small, just to let me know he was still in it. Still thinking about me. But nothing came. By midnight, I was spiraling. Had I misunderstood? Was that moment in the car just heat of the moment courage, and now he was regretting it? I stared at my phone so long, I thought I might will a text into existence. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Dylan. "You up? Coffee?" 3 words. But it felt like breathing again. 20 minutes later, we were sitting across from each other at our usual spot, a cramped cafe near the train tracks that always smelled like cinnamon and burnt toast. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much either. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I echoed. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes flicking around before they landed back on me. "So, I've been thinking." I braced myself. "This is weird," he said. "Not like you, just the situation. I've never done this before, been into a guy, or thought about what that even means." I nodded, slowly. "Yeah, I get it." "I don't want to pretend nothing happened," he added quickly. "I meant that. I still mean it, but I need to figure out how to be in this." "Are you saying you want to keep this secret?" I asked, more gently than I expected. "I'm saying I don't know what I'm doing," he said, "but I know I want to be near you while I figure it out." That hit harder than I thought it would. Honest. Imperfect. But real. I can work with that, I said. He smiled then, a little unsure, but grateful. It made the air between us easier. Lighter. We didn't touch. Not in that moment, but something passed between us that didn't need to be spoken. A kind of agreement. A promise that even if we were stumbling through this, we were doing it together. That week became the beginning of a strange new normal. We didn't label anything, didn't talk about feelings every second. But there were changes. He'd linger longer when he came over. Sometimes we'd sit on my couch for hours, his thigh pressed against mine, both of us pretending we didn't notice but silently refusing to move. He started texting me more too. Random stuff. Memes. A video of a squirrel stealing a slice of pizza. But sometimes his messages were quieter. "Can't stop thinking about the tent." Or, "You make me feel safe." Is that weird? It wasn't weird, I got it. One night, maybe 2 weeks after the trip, he came over unannounced. He didn't say much when I opened the door, just held up a six-pack and a lopsided grin. We ended up watching some old action movie, sprawled across the couch, not talking much. Halfway through, he reached over and took my hand. Just like that. No warning, no explanation, just fingers sliding between mine like they'd always belonged there. I didn't say a word, just held on tighter. After that night on the couch, things started to feel different, calmer, maybe even stable. Dylan didn't disappear again. If anything, he got more consistent. He'd call me just to talk about nothing, or swing by with takeout like it was no big deal. But the little things gave him away. The way he'd sit a little closer each time, or how his hand would brush against mine when we walked, and he wouldn't pull away right away anymore. But we were still in this bubble, our own little safe zone, sealed off from everything and everyone else. That only lasted until the Friday night party. One of our college friends, Cam, had invited us both. Backyard beers, a fire pit, too many people trying to relive their early 20s. I wasn't in the mood, but Dylan insisted. Said we could just swing by for an hour, keep it chill. The problem was, Dylan had always been a bit of a chameleon. Around me, he was soft-spoken, open, a little vulnerable. But around the guys, especially our old crew, he'd shift. Jokes got louder, words got rougher. That performative, alpha edge crept back in. And I hated how easy it was for him to slip into it. He introduced me to a girl from his office. Tall, pretty, chatty. She clung to his arm like she already knew his type, and he didn't push her away. I tried not to watch too closely, tried not to care, but my chest was burning in that way that told me I did. Way more than I wanted to admit. At one point, I caught him watching me from across the fire. Our eyes met, and he gave me this small, unreadable look. Then he turned away. By the time I hit my second beer, I was ready to leave. But when I told him I was heading out, he just nodded. "Cool, man. Text me when you're home." "Cool, man." I walked the whole way back to my place, even though I could have called a ride. I needed to move, to wear off the buzz and shake off the feeling that I'd just taken a back seat in my own story. The next day, he didn't call, didn't text. Sunday afternoon, he showed up. I opened the door, and there he was, wearing a wrinkled hoodie, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept. I screwed up, he said before I could even speak. I didn't answer right away, just stepped aside to let him in. He sat on the couch, rubbing his hands over his face. I froze last night, he said. I saw you standing there, and I wanted to come talk to you. I wanted to walk over and… I don't know, acknowledge you. Us. You didn't, I said flatly. I know. I sat across from him, folding my arms. Was it that girl? He shook his head. No, she was just there. It was the guys, the scene. I slipped into autopilot. And I hated myself for it the second you walked away. I looked at him, this person I'd known for years. And for the first time, I really saw the war happening inside him. Wanting to be one thing, needing to be another. Dylan, I said quietly, you don't have to prove anything to me, but if you're scared of being seen with me, if you're not ready, I need to know. He looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed but steady. I'm not scared of you, he said. I'm scared of losing the only person who actually knows me. That broke something open in me. I stood up, crossed the room, and sat beside him. Then stop hiding. Not from them, from yourself. He reached out slowly, almost like he was asking permission. I let him. His hand found mine, warm and trembling. I want this, he said, voice low, and I want to stop pretending I don't. I squeezed his hand, then leaned my head against his shoulder. Then start here, now. He nodded. I could feel it, the quiet resolve starting to settle in his body. Maybe it wouldn't be perfect, maybe the guys would talk, maybe people wouldn't understand. But Dylan was here, with me, choosing me. And for the first time, I believed he meant it. It didn't change overnight. Nothing ever really does. But after that Sunday, something settled between us. A decision, unspoken but solid. Dylan didn't just want to keep figuring it out. He wanted to live it. With me, out in the open. The first time he reached for my hand in public, we were walking through a quiet park, a few blocks from his place. It was dusk, the sky going pink behind the buildings. We were talking about something dumb, food maybe, or how bad my Spotify taste was, and he just slipped his fingers through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for once, it was. I watched his face for any flicker of fear, but he just smiled, like he'd finally let himself exhale. Later that night, lying in his bed, tangled up in his sheets, he ran his fingers down my chest and whispered, "You're the only person who's ever made me feel like I don't have to be someone I'm not." That hit me harder than anything else he'd said before. Weeks passed and we got braver. We didn't announce it to the world, but we didn't hide anymore either. He brought me to game nights with his friends. I invited him to dinner with mine, and slowly, the people who mattered didn't just accept it, they got it. They saw the way we looked at each other, they saw the shift. But of course not everyone reacted the same. There were old friends who ghosted, or made weird jokes that weren't really jokes. Dylan took those hits harder than I did, but every time it got to him, he'd reach for my hand under the table, or squeeze my thigh like he needed to remind himself why he was doing this. "You're enough," I told him once, when he came home pissed after running into an old buddy who'd laughed and said, "You're one of those now?" Dylan had just nodded, eyes dark, jaw tight. "You're not one of anything," I said. "You're just you, and that's all I've ever wanted." We had our first real fight a few weeks later. It was stupid, about who was supposed to buy groceries. But the fight wasn't really about food. It was about stress. About how close he still kept his emotions sometimes. How much he still struggled to name what he felt. "You have to let me in," I'd said, frustrated. "I am letting you in," he shouted. "You think this is easy for me?" Silence. Then, softer. "I'm doing the best I can." And he was. I knew that. We worked through it. We always did. Eventually, the camping trip started to feel like a lifetime ago. But I think about it sometimes. That night in the tent, that first touch, the fear, the uncertainty, the thrill, and how all of it led here. Now, months later, we were spending most nights at each other's places. His sock drawer had half my stuff. My Netflix account had all his weird watch history. I found an old photo of us on my fridge, us at some dumb college Halloween party, arms around each other, both drunk and smiling like idiots. Back then, I had no idea. But looking at it now, I couldn't imagine my life without him in it. One night, we were on the roof of his building. It was one of those quiet, clear nights where the city didn't feel quite so loud. He passed me a beer, leaned back on his elbows, and looked out over the skyline. "You think we'll ever stop feeling like this is new?" he asked. "What, us?" "Yeah," I thought about it. "I hope not," I said. "I hope we always remember how weird and wild it was in the beginning. But I also hope it starts to feel solid." He turned to me, his eyes catching the glow of the city lights. "You make me feel like I'm finally standing on something real," I smiled. "Same." He kissed me then. Slow, familiar, honest. And that's what this became. Not some secret, not some question mark we couldn't answer, but something real, something worth holding on to.